Many of the Indian philosophical disciplines such as Sankhya, Yoga, Advaita, Ayurveda, astrology, and art forms like dance, music, etc. are deeply indebted to Tantra. Tantra is a Sanskrit word. When the word Tantra is split, we can see that the word Tantra is a combination of two root words in Sanskrit denoting two different actions. These two root Sanskrit words are Tanoti and Trayati. The word Tanoti means expansion. Tanoti can also mean to stretch, to expand, etc. The word Trayati means liberation. It can also mean to liberate, to free, to separate, etc. The word Tantra is formed by the combination of the first syllable Ta in Tanoti and the first syllable Tra in Trayati. Together, they are pronounced as Tantra, and together the word denotes freedom through expansion. Namaskar. My name is Nandan Kandana. For the past 40 years, I have been a humble student of Indian and Western esoteric philosophies. I am also a meditator for several years now and a practitioner of Kriya Yoga for the past few years. My postgraduate subject was consciousness studies. I know there are many others around me who are similarly into various yogic sciences. The objectives of these talks are threefold. Firstly, these are part of my note sharing with my fellow students, which can perhaps make their studies a little bit easier. Secondly, some of my fellow Kriya practitioners had asked me about the tantric basis for Kriya Yoga, especially with respect to the 36 tattvas of creation and the concepts of Ishvara. In fact, a basic understanding of these 36 building blocks of creation can become the bedrock of all spiritual pursuits and not just Kriya Yoga alone. Thirdly, it is my ardent wish to share the basics of Tantra with the youngsters so that they will be encouraged to bring about a sort of balance in their material and spiritual outlooks in their lives. When I started a similar talk series in Malayalam, which is my mother tongue, a few of the youngsters came and talked about their desire to receive it in English language. In our present day world, things are easier understood by the next generation if given in that language. Of course, there are a lot of misunderstandings about Tantra. Many think that Tantra is about superstition or about temple worshipping or even about sacred sex. These are far from the real truth behind Tantra. I wish to try and dispel these misunderstandings by providing the correct context and purpose of Tantra. We have seen that the word Tantra etymologically means liberation or freedom through expansion. Here, naturally, two questions arise. Expansion of what? And freedom for what? The science of Tantra says that it is the expansion of awareness. The freedom attained is for living an exalted state of awareness. Now, the third question arises. What is awareness? Awareness is consciousness. All of us have a sense of awareness within us that I am conscious. That self-awareness of being aware is consciousness. Tantra is the art and science of expanding that consciousness to the highest possible degree in each one of us. The consciousness is what each one of us really is. In other words, we are not this body, we are not this mind. Our body and mind are just some tools that the real I, meaning consciousness, use. The body, this body, mind, eyes, nose, tongue, ears, skin, and all other senses are merely like the costumes that consciousness wears to enable itself to live and function in this material world. It is like a deep sea underwater diver wears his diving gear and oxygen tank, etc., while going underwater. Death is nothing but the taking off of all these costumes and returning to the ranks. This is one of the most valuable and fundamental lessons that Tantra and Upanishads teach us. Consciousness is not just inside we humans. There is consciousness in everything we can see in this universe, and in everything that we cannot see in this universe too. Everything that is here, everything that was here, and everything that is going to be here, all are beautiful mono acts of consciousness in different forms and names. More precisely, Tantra teaches that all things, grass, flowers, worms, you and I, this earth, the sky, and the air, everything have different degrees of consciousness. In other words, everything is a mono act of consciousness. The entire cosmos is the mono act of consciousness. The universal consciousness disguises itself and stands as many. And then it confuses us by making us feel that everything is different. There is consciousness even in a speck of clay. That is, when you put a speck of clay in water, the clay dissolves. When you put the same clay in acid, the clay will react with the acid. The clay has a degree of consciousness. No clay needs to be told what to do where. In order to understand the concept of consciousness that we are discussing here, through a comparison, consider the degree of consciousness present in a speck of clay is equal to the power of light emitted by a candlelight. Now, take a butterfly for another example. Butterflies also have consciousness. Its consciousness is more evolved than that of a speck of clay. It has the consciousness needed to fly, to go and land on flowers and suck nectar. It is conscious enough to fly away if a threat arises. Consider the degree of consciousness in a butterfly is similar to that of light emitted by a 10 watts bulb, for the sake of comparison. Now then, humans have a much higher level of consciousness than a butterfly. Now consider the degree of consciousness present in a human is similar to that of the light emitted by 1000 watts bulb. 1000 watts bulb. Man has a much higher degree of consciousness to the extent of having knowledge about the solar systems, about the galaxies, as well as several invisible phenomena such as gravity, electromagnetism, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, God particles, so on and so forth. The consciousness of an average man is immensely greater than that of a butterfly. Is that all? No. The potential of consciousness for further expansion in man, by way of an illustration, is equivalent to that of the brightness of the sun, which is roughly taken as 1.5 million watts of light. Where do 1000 watts of light stand, and where do 1.5 million watts of light stand? This is just one example to illustrate the possibilities for expanding our existing level of consciousness. Consciousness must not be mistaken for our power of intellect or our intelligence. Of course, the sharpness of our intellect or intelligence will be proportionate to the level of consciousness we have reached. Consciousness is one thing and intellect or intelligence is another thing. It is the reflection. The difference between two is like that of the difference between the sunlight and the moonlight. Let me give you another example. If you describe someone something, some of them will grasp it quickly. They will be able to grasp what is being told to them and also what is not being told, as well as what is going to be said the next moment. Some others would not understand it fully and you may have to repeat it several times. Some yet others would not understand you at all. It is only with greater efforts that you would be succeeding in making them understand a little bit. Similarly, we ourselves have to learn a lot about ourselves too. All this will manifest itself only through the gradual expansion of our consciousness. All these differences between one person to another are not due to the fluctuations in a person's intellect. It is happening due to the degree of difference in their respective levels of consciousness. If my consciousness, as another example, is graphically compared to the size of a small lemon, the understanding I generate when I read a book or I see a sight or I hear something will also be to the size of that lemon. If my consciousness is compared to the size of a football, the understanding I generate when I read a book or see a sight or hear something will also be to the size of that football. In every human being, the degree of consciousness that they have already attained is at different levels. That is why not everyone understands all things equally. Haven't you noticed that the 5 children born to the same father and mother in the same household grew up with the same food in the same socio-economic environment, having received almost similar type of education, reacting in 5 different ways to the same event in the house? They all differently respond to same event. All depends on their respective levels of consciousness each of them has reached. Having different degrees of consciousness is no one's fault. There is nothing to be ashamed of, nor is there anything to be proud of either. It is just what it is. It is, however, everyone's responsibility to consciously evolve from the level where we stand today. The goal and promise of Tantra is the expansion of consciousness of man. But in human beings, as we have seen, consciousness stands at different degrees. Therefore, a standardized methodology based on one size fits all would not work clearly here. So, Tantra has come up with methods of expanding consciousness that is appropriate for each level. More on that in the next session. Thank you.